Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Walaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum. Walaikum salam, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Walaikum salam, sir.
So, are you ready for the presentation?
Yes, sir.
So, let us start then.
Sure, sir. So, shall we start?
Please start, Mama.
Okay, sir. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Umama, how is this related to our topic of presentation today?
Nafis, the poem tells us that how we all face diverging identical roads in our life, and then by being an independent thinker, we make the right choice to reach our decision. In the same way, a manager in his workplace faces conflicts of selecting one option, and that is when his character is forged when he chooses between two rights.
Yes, I have got an idea of what you are hinting at. Now, let's take our audience toward our presentation and help our future manager in shaping their personal and professional identities with three anecdotes. Good morning, everyone. I, Nafis Hussain.
And I, Umama Zahir, will be presenting you on the topic The Discipline of Building Character by Joseph L. Badrucker Jr.
And I promise by the end of it, you will learn to navigate through right versus right decision with grace and strength.
In our everyday life, we all face two kinds of situations. First, ethical decisions, when one has to choose between right and wrong, which is quite common. And the second one is defining movements, picking between two rights. It's a challenging situation because it is at this time when we introspect, uncover ourselves, and reveal something new about us which was partially unknown.
Today, we will ponder on three thought provoking questions like who am I, who are we, and who is the company. It is by asking these questions a manager get a better handle on his most challenging and essential business problem.
The first defining moment. It is for an individual when he has to make pivotal decisions which bring purpose and meaning to one's life. It gives direction to the journey when one feels like stumbling. And the first question arises: what feelings and intuitions are coming into conflict in the situation? It is then a manager should handle the conflict as natural tension between two valid perspectives. Let me expound it more by an example of a young analyst, Steve Lewis, an African American who worked in a well known investment bank in Manhattan. One morning, he found a letter on his office table asking him to fly to St. Louis in 2 days for an important presentation. He was startled on reading it, as it was against the company's policy to include analysts in client meetings. He walked down the hall to meet his mentor, also an African American, and asked him if he was aware of the situation. Then his friend told him that their identity of being black is what is common in them and their special client, who wants at least one black professional in the meeting, or else the company will fail in making a deal with him. It was the matter of his intuitions and feelings, as Lewis, on the one hand, wanted to maintain his self respect and climb the success ladder, not as a token employee of the company, but through his hard work. And on the other hand, being a former athlete, he didn't believe in letting the team down. On examining further, he realized it was a complex problem which is more at a personal and manageable level. Here, the second question can be considered in resolving the conflict. Which of the responsibilities and values that are in conflict are most deeply rooted in my life and in the communities I care about? Taking the case of Lewis. Since his sophomore year of college, he had seen himself as a partner at a major investment bank on Wall Street. For making his dream a reality, he had worked hard. His African American background made him think about an incident when he and his parents made a reservation at a restaurant which did not serve blacks, and they were denied entry by the waitress. After getting home, his mother made the reservation again, but this time under her maiden name because his father was a popular athlete. It was then when they were given entry in the same restaurant. Only after going into flashback, he could come out of his dilemma and find the best answer to his present state. He now started looking at the situation as an African American and not as an investment banker. His race was a vital part of his identity with deeper and stronger relations than his professional role. It would have been possible that the introspection which Lewis was involved in can divorce him from real world demands. But the third question comes in. What combination of shrewdness and expediency, coupled with imagination and boldness, will help me in implement my personal understanding of what is right? Lewis decided to combine idealism with realism and told his partner that he wanted to be a part of the presentation for which he was ready to work every minute in the preparation. Lewis worked on it and even with a terrible headache, presented his 12-minute part well. He was appreciated by his colleagues and at the same time strengthened the position in the company by his practical intelligence.
Now, I would like to explain the second defining moment, that is defining moment for manager in a work group. As managers move up in an organization, defining moments become more difficult to resolve. And these defining moments are collectively responsible for defining the organization as who are we. Managers in a work group do not have to face only conflict between his two beliefs, but he also have to take into account the values of their work group and his responsibility toward the people he manages. For example, how a manager should address an employee who repeatedly comes into office with the smell of alcohol in his mouth, or how he should address an employee who made sexual remarks to others. These defining moments are important to define the group's future and shape its value. In an organization, people are from different background, culture, ethnicity, and religion. This creates a difference in point of view. Most of the time, manager thinks that the entire group views the situation through the same lens as they do, and in this way, they are unable to uh, they are unable to bring people together to accomplish a common goal. They must ask themselves, what are the other strong, persuasive interpretation of the ethics of this situation? Now, let me illustrate the situation of a manager named Peter Adario. He headed the marketing department of Share Microworld. He was married and had 3 children. He recently hired Catherine McNeil, a single mother, highly qualified and competent account manager. Her pace at work was demanding, as it requires her time, but she is having a hard time in managing both her work and family life. Therefore, she could not go along with her supervisor, Lisa Walter. Lisa Walter was a middle level manager who reported to Adario. She was an ambitious and hard driving woman. She was irritated with the McNeil's unpredictable work schedule and tried multiple times to report it to Adario. But he did not pay much attention toward her concern. Adario himself, being a father, was sympathetic to McNeil's situation. Therefore, it was clearly a defining moment for him. He decided to call up a meeting with two women to somehow resolve the issue. But shortly before the meeting, Walter discussed the issue with the company's senior executive, and later both of them have decided to fire her. So what we can observe here, that for a given situation, both of them have a different point of view. For Walter, it was a situation of choosing between right and wrong. But for Adario, it was a situation of choosing between two rights. And it is at this moment a manager need to ask themselves what point of view is most likely to win the contest of interpretation and influence the thinking and behavior of other people. Manager need to take a hard look at the organization in which they work and make a realistic assessment of company's culture, group norms, goals, and policy. For Adario and McNeil, both the demand of work and family create a constant fatigue. But for other employees, most of them were young, work-family conflict meant nothing but workload, so that other could spend time with their family. An effective manager should learn to spot a problem before it actually arises and should ask himself, have I orchestrated a process that can make my interpretation win in my group? As Adario failed to respond to the Walters' concern, she may have interpreted two things. First, that he would not stand in the way of firing McNeil. Second, that she may even thought that Adario wanted McNeil fired, but he is unwilling to do it himself. Instead of waiting for the issue to arise, he could have taken a proactive approach in defining a work culture that valued both family and work. He had an opportunity to turn the events and promote McNeil inside the organization and made others appreciate her for what she was going through. But his defining moment went wrong, and Walters took the advantage of it and preempted him. Walter was a political savvy, whereas Adario was an organizational savvy that led him into darkness. To get the job done, one has to use the effective tactics to get out of the organizational fray. After firing McNeil, Adario wanted McNeil. Adario admired McNeil and he wanted her to thrive, but his intentions were not backed by shrewdness. After firing McNeil, Walters had her eye on Adario's position and was liked by top management because of her take charge style. She seized the moment by carefully planning her moves and, with the help of top management, carried out her plans successfully. After getting stumbled by his first defining moment, he became more confident that by learning that other employees also face the same work-family conflict and gained his lost confidence. He strongly objected the firing of McNeil in front of his boss and warned Walter that her action would be noted in her next performance review. And in this way, he marked his spot, although belatedly.
Before I come to you and define the third movement, that who is the company, let me quote Brian Chesky, CEO of Airbnb. The hardest thing to manage in a crisis isn't your company, it's your own psychology. You can ask why me and get paralyzed, or you can tell yourself that this is my defining moment. When a top level manager commits not just himself or the work groups, but the entire company to an irreversible course of action, defining movements become compound, and he is required to manifest his understanding at a large stage. Only a strengthful leader can bring forth the right vision in a situation by asking him a question. Have I done all I can to secure my position and the strength of my organization? Exemplifying with an incident happened in 1988 in a French pharmaceutical company, the CEO of Russell Acloff, Edward Suckes, decided to market an abortion pill Rue 486. With this, he drew himself into an international controversy as anti-abortion groups started outrage, whereas pro-choice groups believed it as a major step towards securing women's rights. It was a defining moment for him, as on one hand, being a physician himself, he had a long-standing commitment to Rule 486 and wanted to help thousands of women from injury in poor countries. Sakis wanted to secure his position in a company, and on another level, he had the responsibility of securing the job of the employees. The situation pushes him to question, have I thought creatively and boldly about my organization's role in society and its relationship to stakeholders? This third type of defining moment is difficult, as an executive is asked to form, reveal, and test not only himself and their work group, but also the entire company and its role in the society. Whatever steps Sakis thought of taking, he was clear that there was no easy way out. He had to avoid dragging the company from painful boycotts and violence. Although it was easy for him to please his boss and avoid a controversy, instead, he wanted to define the company's role in a daring way. It was clear to him that he wanted to introduce the drug onto the market with the support of women seeking non-surgical abortions and their physicians as the stakeholders. All he had to decide were who his allies were inside and outside the company and which parties will resist or fight his efforts. But the only question was, what combination of shrewdness, creativity, and tenacity will help him transform the vision into the reality? From the discussion held in 21st October 1988, a month after the French government approved Rule 486, Sakis surprised the members of the management committee by voting in favor of suspending the drug because, according to him, it was taking too much time in the controversy and hurting the employees' morale. The company announced its decision publicly, citing the reason of pressure from anti-abortion groups, which soon sparked the astonishment and anger from women's groups, family planning advocates, and physicians in the United States and Europe. 3 days after the announcement, the French health minister summoned the company's vice chairman and said to resume the distribution of the drug, else the patent would get transferred to another company. The company reversed its decision and stunned the public again. And this was how Sakis achieved his goals in a fox-like manner without leading like a courageous lion. With his sagacious decisions, he secured his position, and with the involvement of the French government, he deflected the controversy away from the company and protected the organization and its employees.
Now, I would like to conclude our discussion. Defining moment give us the opportunity for personal growth. It helps us to dig below the busy surface and focus on our core value and beliefs. As we have moved from Steve Lewis, who balanced his personal value with the realities of business world, to Peter Adario, who had an understanding of his personal value, but he failed to adapt them with the realities, to Edward Sakis, who stayed connected with his personal value and those of his organization. Three managers attained success with varying degrees by engaging them in a difficult act of self-reflection. It was their calculative action which made them understand what was right in a given situation. Finally, we can conclude from the three complex challenges that once the value are uncovered, principle can act as a springboard for pragmatic and shrewd action. And in this way, an individual can transform himself from being a manager to becoming a leader. That was all from our side. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Nafis and Umama. You did a good job. Now let us listen to
Thank you, sir.
Hassan and Faraz now. We'll come back to you after listening to them and we will evaluate the performance. Sorry, it seems there was some problem in my connection. So I was inquiring about Mubashir Hassan and Faraz Malik. Are they not there in the class?
So I think they are not.
It's very sad because managing oneself is perhaps the weightiest article out of various articles that we are presenting, and they've absented.
Sir, I think Mudassir has left the course.
And what about Faraz Malik?
Sir, I don't know about him.
Anyway, so I think Umama and Nafis,
Yes, sir.
can you open up your camera?
Yes.
So, Mama, let me ask first your own reflections about your performance.
Sir, I think it was an average performance. I was nervous, so um, that's what all I can say. Rest, others will
Can
give the
you can
feedback.
you can you reflect on the preparation part of the
Uh,
presentation?
so, like how
How
we
did you
prepared it.
prepare and all that?
Okay, sir, we have been practicing it since last Monday,
Hmm.
and we have worked a lot on our pronunciation. And then the only motive was that it should be well coordinated because the whole article contained three big stories, and we don't want the audience to get bored.
Hmm.
So the purpose was that it should be a moving slide, that when we are speaking, that picture should be there on the screen. So that was a basic thing which we planned, and hopefully it got implemented.
Mhm. And what about you, Nafis? What is your reflection on the preparation part?
Sir, I think while presenting, I was having lack of enthusiasm and confidence. And at the same time, I feel nervous, sir. I feel nervous at the time of
Please, you
presenting.
have to speak a bit louder. Your voice is not coming to us very clearly.
Okay, sir. So I'm saying
It's a
that
creeping voice. Yes.
I was nervous at the time of presenting because it was my first presentation. That was nervousness I faced, and I also faced lack of enthusiasm. I think I don't know what's your review, but I faced that I was having a lack of enthusiasm and confidence in my presentation.
Are you happy with your preparation and the efforts that you put in on
So
prior to coming for
it
presentation?
can be a bit more better. So, but
Especially
we
what?
have I got stuck at some point, or maybe my expression were not.
Again, please use the mic. I think your voice is not.
Sir, I think what can be better is I can work on my expression. I think I'm not having so much of expression while presenting.
But that's very aptly assessed.
Yes.
So you could be more cheerful, like
Yes.
Umama is, isn't it? So you should smile more often. Now you
Yes.
are looking good, actually. Isn't it?
Thank you.
So apart from that, I think in terms of presentation, in terms of your preparation, I guess it was a good preparation because
Thank you, sir.
both of you presented in
Thank
a
you, sir.
lucid manner. The presentation was flowing very smoothly, and Yes, you were enthusiastic. Umama, especially, you were quite enthusiastic when you were speaking. And Nafis, you can work a bit on it.
Yes.
In terms of the stories, I think stories engage people. But how do we share the stories? Because they were long stories, isn't it? Especially the last story which you shared about that pharmaceutical company and how it played like a fox instead of a lion. And apparently, it gave an impression that it is succumbing to the pressure of the pro-choice, the pro-choice group, and withdrawing the medicine. So, how do you present the story? This is something which you can, further work on, I would say. Or is even that story of single mother and all that. I have earlier also discussed this. That why don't you indigenize the example? For example, people may forget who was Adorio or who was so and who was so and so, isn't it? You can even use this. There was this lady who was a single mother, and there was this boss of this lady who was not able to appreciate the personal context of this lady. And ultimately, you know what happened? Who was the boss? Who was, I mean, so you can
Yes.
share the stories more in a more engaging manner,
Yes.
especially, using the names which may not be very familiar to us. So I have discussed this idea earlier also, that we have to remain true to the article, to the idea, but we can have our own creativity in using the examples, or we can indigenize the examples, isn't it? Because that will not actually impact the idea. So when you are defining your work group, and you want to create a more humane work group where, for example, there is diversity. For example, you have women also in the team, and when you have women in the team, you also have a consideration for their personal context. Okay. So you could, state the examples even better. Think of creative ways to present the article in such a, especially the examples of the article, the stories in the article, or the stories that you can generate around the article which you are presenting. That would create even better engagement. You were engaged, as some of your friends have already commented, that both of you coordinated very well. And I think one comment which has not yet come and it should have come. Your slides were also very well made. The PowerPoint slides were, you know, they were elegant. They were visuals. There were visuals in the slides, so that was creating an impact. And that way, I mean, it was a good preparation. It was a good preparation. Now, one C which we have been talking about, and that C is creativity. How can you bring more creativity in your delivery? And that can happen when you learn to store. I mean, we are not born as a good storyteller. We gradually become one. So learn to narrate the stories, share it with varied groups, isn't it? So after each narration, you become even a better storyteller. So this is my, I think, submission to both of you is that try to even, even the best can be improved. So I'm very happy that your friends have assessed your presentation very favorably, and we are getting very good comments on the chat box. But don't get complacent by that.
Yes, sir.
Especially Nafis, if it was your first performance
Yes.
as a speaker, it is even more credible, isn't it? Because even if you were nervous, it was not showing when you were presenting. In fact, I have commented on this earlier also, that you have to be nervous, because then that nervousness helps you prepare harder and do even better. So I think I would comment, my final comment would be work on the expression part,
Yes. Definitely.
and that includes both verbal as also non-verbal. In case of Nafis, the non-verbal is also important, especially your facial gestures.
Yes.
You should radiate energy, and that will engage with the audience.
Thank you.
Can we, because we have time, can we comment on the content of the article? Can we have some reflections from the audience? How do they like this? How do they assess this idea that actually the character is shaped in those defining moments where we choose between two rights, isn't it? Which is the core of this article, choosing between two rights. So if you look at that perspective, I mean, in both the situations, for example, suppose there's a professional who professes Muslim faith, for example, and there's a delegation coming from Saudi Arabia, and he's kept there just to, show that we have Muslim employees also. Now, how would you view this situation? Would you back out because your faith is being projected to win over a client? Likewise, the second situation in which, you know, as they call it in leadership, task orientation versus people orientation. What kind? Both orientations are actually okay. So the lady who feels that this lady is taking too many exceptions and as a result is not task focused, and she may have this opinion, okay, once you are on the job, then you are on the job. Your personal concerns are your personal concerns. You have to find out a way to manage them. As opposed to another orientation which may say, okay, no, we have to be considerate, more humane in our approach. What in leadership literature is called people orientation. Or, society has contentious issues, like, for example, the third case which was described, where there was a pro choice group and there was an anti abortion group. So, which side you actually go? Do you argue, okay, yes, everyone has a right to choose? Or the versus the other group, the anti abortion group, which says that how can you decide for a person who is not yet born? It should I actually has been that unborn baby's choice, and you are taking that choice for that baby, unborn baby. So both the perspectives, they may have their supporters. Now, how do you navigate your way through such differences of opinions in a society, because ultimately you are running a company, you have to pay salaries, and if by taking a side your financial interests are harmed, then how do you negotiate those demands? So this analogy which was used in the article is a very powerful analogy, that do you join the issues with the society and state your priorities very clearly, like you are for anti-abortion, and you state it loud and clear, as opposed to, you say, okay, you will act as per the stakeholders, your assessment of stakeholders. If French government insists you have to produce this drug, we will produce. If anti-abortion group says don't produce this drug, you will say, okay, if the pressure mounts, we will withdraw. So what the class, I would like to have some opinions expressed on this issue. The two key ideas that were there in the article. How do we choose between two rights? And second, having chosen or selected an option, how do you go about pressing for that option? Like a lion or like a fox? Yes, you are very right. This comment which has come. In fact, our core values get defined in these moments. And they get not only defined but refined in the process. So there is no point in taking a position in an abstract way. Those positions have to be taken in the context of the real hard realities of the real world. So, I mean, that way I think this article is a very powerful article. And those of you who have not read it, I hope this presentation by Omama and Nafis has generated sufficient interest amongst the audience on, and they wish to read this article because of the weighty ideas, and also the lucid way in which the ideas have been presented in the article. So those of you who wish to read it, I would strongly recommend that they do read it. Okay. If there are some observations, we welcome. Otherwise, we call it a day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.